everyone. I'm Jochen Schröder from the University of Sydney, from CUDOS at the University of Sydney. And I'd just like quickly to sort of tell you a bit about this seminar series that we've been running at CUDOS, and which we now have one seminar here together with KOALA conference, and we're really happy that Ben thought this was a good idea and agreed to this, and that we sort of can explore or can bring this to a sort of bit of a broader audience. So the idea for this entrepreneurship seminar series, what we call it, came out of the CUDOS workshop about 2 years ago, where a lot of the students said, we actually want to hear, like, or get mentoring and like education for areas outside, which sort of prepare us for jobs outside of academia. Because really, I mean, at universities, we all know that, like, the main thing you learn about is, like, you're being prepared for a job in academia. But reality is not everybody will get a job or will want a job in academia. And so out of this idea then developed the idea to have some, initially it was the thought of a topical workshop, and then we developed this into a seminar series together with Simon Poole from Finisa, who's involved in CUDOS as well as an advisory board member. So today we have a talk from John Dyson about the role of venture capitalists in entrepreneurship. I'm very happy to have John Dyson here and that he agreed to talk to us. So I won't go through his whole bio because that's quite a lot.
It's a bit boring as well.
So John doesn't come from a physics background at all. He has a financial background and studied actually here in Melbourne at Monash University. He's one of the founders of Starfish Ventures, where he's now the position is investment principal of the company. He has a vast experience in the field of investment and venture capitalists with companies such as JFCO or Jeffco, ANZ, Schroders, Nomura. He's also a passionate alpine skier and former chairman of Mount Tola and Mount Stirling Alpine Resort Management Board, and the chair of the Swinburne commercialization office. That's the word. So, well, let's welcome John, and I'm looking forward to a very interesting talk.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank Johan and Ben and CUDOS and KOALA and the University of Melbourne for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. This is a great opportunity for me to speak about venture capital, something which I'm very, very passionate about. We've known Simon Poole for many years. We were lucky enough to back Simon in Ghana, which was the company that he eventually sold to Finisa. So we've known Simon for many, many years. I'm a bit afraid, to be honest. I know nothing about physics. I did do physics in year 11 at school, but I failed very badly, and I still remember with my report card when it arrived at home in Brighton that at the end of it the physics teacher had written down all of the things which I hadn't done, and let me tell you, that was a pretty long list. So my parents were pretty disappointed, but it definitely highlighted to me I had no future in physics. So if anyone has any physics questions, I'm not the person to answer them. More than happy to answer any questions about entrepreneurship or venture capital, and I'm very keen for today to be as interactive as possible, so please feel free to ask questions at any time or raise any topic. I'm more than happy to speak to. So unfortunately I work in an industry sometimes where it has a bit of a bad reputation. I know entrepreneurs and academics can get very frustrated there's lots of money out there, but trying to actually raise money can be pretty challenging. And again, this is a cartoon which is probably well over 15 years old, which kind of unfortunately just kind of highlights what some people think about our industry, which, as I said, can be a bit distressing. But one of the things I will talk about today is that it's nothing like that, and that basically we want to work with young entrepreneurs, young academics, and provide them with capital. One of the hardest things about working in the venture capital industry is no one knows what I do. I was lucky enough to go to my 30th school reunion on Friday, and I know I don't look as though I could be that old, but let me assure you, I was there on Friday with many people who I hadn't seen from when I was at school, and going up to people I haven't seen for 30 years. People always ask you what you do, how long you've been married, are you married, are you still married, how many times have you been married, how many kids do you have, and so on. And so when I explain to people I work in venture capital, you can just see this, venture capital, what is that? And I go, well, what we do is that we want to go out and find young and motivated and excited entrepreneurs and work with them and give them capital. You give them money to allow them to fulfill their dreams and their aspirations and hopefully build fantastic businesses. And most of the people who I went to school with become doctors or lawyers or barristers. You can just see going, okay, that sounds pretty boring. But let me tell you, it's the complete opposite. What I do every day is super, super exciting. To wake up and work with entrepreneurs who want to actually go out and build something. They want to go out and create economic value. They want to start a company and they want to build the next Google or the next Facebook or the next Cisco. It's fantastic, and I'm really, really privileged in what I do. One of the best descriptions I've ever heard about what I do is actually from my youngest daughter, who's 14, and she came up with this description a few years ago, and she hates me saying it. And this is why we have this picture up here for, because she describes what I do as giving birth to companies. Like, obviously, I don't give birth to companies, but obviously we facilitate. And I can see we've got a mother-to-be in the audience. So let me tell you, having been with my wife when she's delivered a couple of kids, I know I don't deliver companies. But what we do is facilitate other people to, as I said, achieve their dreams and hopefully build fantastic businesses. My talk today is a bit of a mix of an introduction to venture capital, talk a bit about Starfish Ventures, talk a bit about the process that people need to go through to raise capital, and just give you a bit of a feel for the size of the industry in Australia. So it's a bit of a mismatch of a bunch of different topics. Introduction to Starfish Ventures, and lots of people say, why do you call yourself Starfish Ventures? That sounds a pretty funny name. And naming companies is super challenging, to be honest. It's a bit like naming children, which everyone has different views about names of children. And what we wanted to do was to come up with a name which kind of symbolised what we do. And our view is without the start, without the finish, from start to finish, Starfish Ventures. So the name is a bit of a play on words about what we see our role is in helping support entrepreneurs and giving them capital. We're based in Jolimont in East Melbourne, very close to the Melbourne cricket ground. We manage $400 million that we've raised almost exclusively out of institutional investors in Australia. So we very much tap into the superannuation pool. As you know, the superannuation industry in Australia is gigantic, well over $1 trillion now, and we basically raised money from institutional investors who basically collect people's superannuation. So we manage $400 million in three key funds. Our first fund was a pre-seed fund, which was a federal government initiative started back in 2002 to support academics coming out of universities. The federal government has the view that they spend a huge amount of money supporting core research and development at universities and CRCs and CSRO, and they started this pre-seed program back in 2002 to allow academics to get access to higher risk commercialisation capital. Our initial fund was 24 million, of which the federal government provided us with 17. That fund is now fully invested in a range of opportunities. We made 18 investments in opportunities ranging from drug discovery, medical devices, some players around chips and semiconductors, and also some software opportunities as well. We're now investing what we call Starfish Technology Fund 2, which is a $185 million fund. And we've nearly finished investing that fund, and we'll probably finish investing the fund over the next 6 months, but we make sure that we have plenty of capital to continue to support our companies as they grow and as they expand. Starfish is 10 years old. We've just had our 10-year anniversary earlier this year, but prior to that, a number of us had worked together at Jeffco, which was a Singapore-based venture capital manager, and we started their business in Australia back in the early 1990s. So we've been doing this now for nearly 20 years. And let me say, I've seen lots of changes in the industry over 20 years, and most of them have been positive changes. We had 7 investment professionals at Starfish, and they have a range of skills in legal, accounting, investment banking, entrepreneurship, as well as some people with very deep R&D experience as well. Yeah, please.
Any expert on risk management?
Yeah, look, I suppose we don't have any experts on risk management. We see ourselves as risk managers. What we do every day is try to manage the risks around the companies. But the risks for us are not like the risks you see at BHP or in ANZ. To us, the risks are much more around making sure the companies meet their performance requirements, performance targets, and that could be more around technical development, product roadmap, or meeting market engagement. This just gives you a feel for the source of entrepreneurial finance in Australia. We obviously play down in this end of the market. One of the really exciting initiatives over the last couple of years has been the development of very early stage capital. Back when I first started 10 or 20 years ago, most people really raised their initial capital from friends, families and fools, where they'd go out to their mother, their father, their brothers, their brother-in-laws, and try to raise $50,000 or $200,000 to get their business started. Now, because of the success of a number of really early stage technology companies, and also because of what's happening in the US, there's been this development of what's called the incubator, virtual incubator, or angel network, where high net worth individuals or former entrepreneurs are willing to provide capital to young startup entrepreneurs, to give them capital to go out and start building their companies, which is great for us because that means that we have some type of filter over opportunities. We obviously have really good relationships with the incubators and the angel network because for us they can do some of the heavy lifting for us in the early stage. Go out, find some really interesting young entrepreneurs, interesting opportunities, provide them with maybe $500,000 or so, which will then allow us to write a much larger check as the company develops. The typical investment size for us is about $7 million or so, but that's over a life of a company. So what's a normal upfront investment for us is anything from $1 million to $4 million on the expectations of putting another $5 to $6 million to work over the life of the investment as the company grows and expands and requires more capital. The other development which has happened in Australia over the last few years has been the increased activity of foreign venture capitalists. So again, as the world has got smaller over the last 10 years or so, it's much easier for foreign investors, typically out of the US, to come into Australia and look at making investments in Australian companies. Typically, they would only invest in companies which are more established. They're unlikely to look at really early stage businesses. But the other thing which has developed, again, over the last few years, and it's much easier now, is for young entrepreneurs or young management teams to actually hop on a plane and leave Australia and go overseas and raise money in China or raise money in the US. That has pros and cons, but again, it's something which is much easier now than it ever has been before. The big thing about venture capital is that when you raise money from Starfish Ventures or any reputable venture capital firms, the big difference is it's not just capital. It's not like going to the bank and mortgaging the house and getting a loan or basically going to the public markets. The big difference is, you actually get a venture capitalist, and one of the things I'll talk about later on is that it's really important to have that strong, robust relationship between the management team and the venture capitalist, because sometimes these companies can take years to build. We've got an investment in a company out of Sydney called Dyson, which is involved in the financial payment industry. We made that investment in 2004, so that's literally nearly 7 years ago. And we need to make sure that we work with people who we think we can build long-term, robust relationships with. And for us, it's a partnership. It's a marriage. And we want to make sure that we can pass on our experience to the entrepreneur, to give the entrepreneur the best chance of success. Having done this for 20 years, we've been lucky enough to be involved with some fantastic companies, and we've been unlucky enough to be involved with some really bad outcomes. And I think you learn a lot more about the defeats than you do from the victories. And we want to make sure that we can pass on the experiences that we have had to make life as easy as possible for the entrepreneur. Because I think the challenges in building a technology company in Australia, whether it's around optics, or whether it's around life science, or whether it's around consumer internet, are surprisingly similar, because it's all about people, it's all about business models, it's all about being able to raise capital. So I think there's a high level of consistency, and again, having lived and breathed it for 20 years, we think we're in a strong position to provide help and assistance to our entrepreneurs. People often talk about why is venture capital important, and we are always in the ear of politicians saying that venture capital is really, really important. If you really believe that the future of Australia is all about a smart country, doing things better and faster and brighter than other countries, venture capital is a really important source of capital to allow entrepreneurs to go out and start companies. And what I've done here, and this is super simplistic, I appreciate that, is to kind of look at the top 10 companies which are listed on NASDAQ, which is a key market in the US, a stock market in the US, which tends to attract the more entrepreneurial technology type companies, and compare it to the top 10 companies listed on the Australian Stock Exchange. And if you actually look down the list of the ones in Australia, and you say to yourself, so which Australian companies is relatively new? What Australian company wouldn't have been there 20 years ago? And you kind of look down the list and you go, which company wouldn't have been there 20 or 30 years ago? And you go, well, really, the only one which I could think of is maybe Wesfarmers. And Wesfarmers is a Western Australian-based conglomerate. They own Coles, the big supermarket chain. They also own Bunnings and a few other businesses. And that's a company which has probably come from nowhere over the last 20 or 30 years. But you look at this side, right? And you go, wow, 30 years, whoa. Apple was Apple around 30 years ago? Probably not. Microsoft, well, it might have started, but it wouldn't have been much 30 years ago. Google, Oracle, Intel, wow. There's probably half a dozen, 8 companies on this side of the ledger that probably didn't really exist 20 or 30 years ago. And now they're world leaders in their field. And almost all of these companies, apart from obviously the two foreign ones, have all raised venture capital. This is how these companies have got started. Yeah, to be fair, this is super simplistic. A fairer comparison might be to the New York Stock Exchange top 10, but the message I want to leave is venture capital has been one of the key benefits in the US. One of the reasons that Silicon Valley exists and one of the reasons that companies like Google and the Facebooks of the world exist is that there's capital and there's expertise in America which goes out and supports young entrepreneurs, provides them with capital to go out and build these fantastic businesses. We don't really have that culture in Australia. It's changing and it's going to take time. But again, it just highlights a key economic benefit that the industry has in the US, which is really the key centre of the venture capital industry. Again, this is a simple case study of a US VC firm called Kleiner Perkins Cawthorne. And Kleiner Perkins is probably the best known venture capital firm in the world. They've been around for quite some time and they have a really big reputation. And this is after they invested their first $1 billion. That $1 billion went into 300 companies, of which nearly half of those, 130 of those, eventually ended up on the stock exchange. Market cap of $300 billion, revenue of $75 billion. But probably the most important statistic is the creation of new jobs. Those companies that Kleiner Perkins supported created 150,000 jobs. And these aren't low-paying, low-value jobs. These are jobs for engineers. These are jobs for programmers. These are jobs for high-skilled university graduates. This just gives you a feel about the growth in the number of people that our companies employ. The government's really interested in these types of employment statistics. One of the reasons that the government is interested and has supported the industry, the venture capital industry, is because of job growth. And as I said, it's just not low quality jobs, it is high quality jobs. And that's growth in our number of employees that our investment companies have employed over the last couple of years. We see lots of opportunities at Starfish, and we log every opportunity. We log the vast majority of opportunities that we see, and we put that into a knowledge database, which allows us to kind of monitor opportunities. Because you find that an opportunity you see back here comes back to visit you here and here and here. So being able to kind of keep some type of basic file note or some type of relationship management allows you to kind of follow the progress of the companies that we see. So on any given year, we will typically see about 350 new opportunities. And we call an opportunity when we actually take a meeting with someone, when someone sends us some information, or when someone comes in to pitch us an investment opportunity. These are not just random emails. These are not just people ringing up with the next weird and wonderful opportunity. So this is when we've actually taken time to read something and taken time typically to take a meeting. It's interesting how deal flow kind of does follow the economic cycle. So as you know, back in 2001, and this is when we started, was the burst of the internet bubble. So as you can see, following the burst of the internet bubble, there was a real drop-off in activity. Things started to improve again in 2004, and again, obviously things got better during that mid-2000 period. We had the global financial crisis, 2008 and 2009, where you saw a huge drop-off in activity. And one of the reasons that you see more opportunities during good times is that people are more confident that they can raise capital, that they're happy to go out and take some risks, because they think that if it doesn't work, they can go back to their former job, or they can find another job. But when times are tough, as they have been the last couple of years, people say to themselves, is this really the time that I should be leaving academia? Is this really the time I should be leaving my well-paying job and trying to start a new business? And most people say to themselves, it's human nature, no, it's too risky, because if things go bad, I just won't have a failed company, but unfortunately, I won't be able to get another job. And that's an issue in Australia, because I think we kind of frown upon people who fail, and that's a really bad thing. My view is it's better to have tried and failed than never to have tried. And this concept of failing is not an issue in the US. It's almost a badge of honour in the US, where people have actually tried to do something and failed. And people go, well, gee, at least you've tried. That's great. It's great that you've tried. And most people learn from that type of experience. And when they do it again, they're in a much better position to have success. The interesting thing, and I'm always amazed about this, is that during the difficult economic times, that the quality of the deal flow improves dramatically. Quality drops off, but the underlying quality of those opportunities are much better. Again, because people believe they've got real businesses, that they've typically thought much harder about what they're trying to do, and we really see a improvement in the quality of the underlying opportunities, which obviously makes our life much easier. And because normally we invest on an expectations of driving exits in 3, 4 or 5 years, a slow economic period is a good time for us to be putting money to work. So over the last 14, 15 months, we've done 7 investments at Starfish. Quite a number of those are really early stage, where we've basically committed only $500,000 or $1 million to these companies. On the expectations, if they are successful, we'll put more money to work. But if they don't meet the agreed milestones around technical development or market engagement, we're able to either close them down or not put any more money to work in those companies. I've got some statistics now to kind of talk about the size of the industry in Australia, and this shows the investments by the Australian venture capital industry in basically technology businesses. And again, albeit hundreds of millions sound impressive, if this was in the US, the US statistics would be in the billions. So it just gives you a feel that our industry is much smaller. And again, you can really see down at this end where the activity has really dropped off. And in the 12 months to the 30th of June, the industry invested $120 million in basically 126 companies. Sorry, they invested $120 million by 126 investments in 76 companies. So again, it gives you a feel about how few companies actually end up raising money. When you consider how many companies that we see 350 a year, how many companies are established every year, it highlights how few actually are successful in raising capital from venture capitalists. And obviously there's other sources. This is a statistic around how many companies are in the total VC portfolio, and again, it's relatively small, only being 200. And this is a portfolio which has probably been in existence for maybe even as long as 10 years. Again, it highlights how few companies actually end up getting supported. This shows how much money is actually raised by investors like ourselves, and again, this really does follow the economic cycle. So lots of money raised during 2007, 2008, and a huge drop-off as we've gone into the global financial crisis. This is a real challenge for the industry going forward. There's been a huge shift away from illiquid investments Ours is very liquid. We typically raise our funds on a 10-year basis, so we don't offer our investors any liquidity until we achieve underlying exits for our investee companies. So as our companies are sold, we return capital to our investors, but that's the only type of liquidity that we offer. Over the 10 years, we typically position it to our investors that we want to invest for 5 years, so we have a 5-year period to put the money to work into companies, and then for the next 5 years, we want to go out and grow and expand our companies on the expectations of selling them during that 5-year period. Normally for us, we always reserve plenty of money to support our companies, beyond the initial investment period, because the companies can have a huge need for ongoing capital. And again, because of the global financial crisis and the general slowdown in economic activity, the holding periods for our companies are much longer now than what we expected or what we've seen in the past. 5 years ago, I would have told you that we would hope to sell all of our companies on an average holding period of 3 to 4 years. Now, the average holding period for our companies are much more like 5, 6, or even 7 years. And with so much volatility in the stock market, that has a huge impact on the opportunity to do public floats, IPOs, and that kind of depresses the M&A activity and the M&A price. And again, that tends just to push out holding periods even longer. So I apologise for my success like that. So what causes companies to be successful? And I think there's 2 key ingredients, and I think the most important thing with that is leadership. Companies succeed because of people, and companies typically fail because of people. And the thing which I've learned over a long period of time is that it's all about leadership. It's all about having the right group of people who can give the directions and basically make things happen. It's great to have a great product, unique patterns, whatever, and that's a huge advantage, no doubt about it. But you could have the best idea in the world, you could have the best optical component you could ever imagine, but unless you actually have people who can go out and articulate what you have, to raise capital, to sell it, to recruit people, it's meaningless. It's all about people. And that's why our business is so hard, because people aren't perfect. We've gone out and backed some fantastic entrepreneurs and had great outcomes, and we've gone out and backed some really shitty entrepreneurs and had really shitty outcomes. And it's hard to judge. And I know a number of VC and private equity firms put people through really stringent and robust personality checks and do all of these psychometric testing on them, because they want to make sure they understand the people who they're supporting and understand what they want to achieve. We're not a big believer in a lot of those tests, because at the end of the day, we think one of the key benefits that we offer is being able to understand whether or not we want to back the people and build relationships with the entrepreneurs and make sure that we can work with them over a long period of time. So talking a bit about the investment process, and this is a really, again, simple breakdown. Obviously the first one is just getting to know each other. Obviously then the heavy due diligence, and the last stage is about the actual consummating the investment. But again, I'd say this is the most important, and this is the thing which takes the longest. We have entrepreneurs coming to see us all the time. When you ask them, so when do you want to raise capital by? They go, can I have the check next week, or can I have the money prior to Christmas? And you go, well, if you're talking Christmas 2012, I think that's okay. If you're talking Christmas 2011, you're smoking drugs. That is just not going to be achievable for us, because we want to get to know you. We want to understand what you are, what you like to work with, and whether or not you're going to be an entrepreneur who can go out and recruit people. We want to understand if you're an entrepreneur who's going to listen to people who might have something worthwhile to say. Because the thing about entrepreneurs, they're coming all different shapes and sizes, and I'll talk a bit about entrepreneurs later on. So one of the things that we look at, so when someone comes to me and pitches me a deal, one of the 4 basic questions that I ask myself about the opportunity, one's about management, I'll talk about that a little bit. The other is uniqueness. I think uniqueness is important. You just don't want to copy, you don't always want to copy someone else's idea. Sometimes that's okay, and I think, as they say about, what do they say about great academics? Great academics borrow other people's ideas. Good academics borrow other people's ideas. Great academics steal them. It was a joke about academics, sorry. Maybe it's a bit too sensitive about stealing other people's ideas. But in our business, sometimes that's a good idea. Because if you look at something like Google, when Google first came into existence, who would have thought we needed another search engine? But Google went about it in a bit of a different way, and a much better product, and built a fantastic product. So uniqueness is important, but I wouldn't say it's essential. But I think having something special about what you offer is. Market growth. We want to make sure that our companies can reach a critical mass. We want to see our companies grow from $1 million to $5 million to $10 million to $100 million in revenue, and that's much easier to do, in a market, which is high growth. So I think market growth, market maturity is really important. I look back over some of the bad investments that we've made, and one of the things that we've often misjudged, and I think one of the hardest things for us to judge, is all about the market. Where do we think the market is heading? And one of the big mistakes VCs make is investing too early. So you think that the market's going to develop next year, you go out and you see the really positive signs, you invest in the companies which is going to be targeting that market opportunity, but that market opportunity never develops, or rather than develops in 12 months, it takes 3 or 4 years. And that's a disastrous scenario for VCs, because you either have to close the company down or provide more and more capital to allow the market opportunity to eventually develop. So that can be a challenge. And my last thing is exits. Like, at the end of the day, we do this business because we want to make money for our investors, and we make money for our investors, and we make money. So we want to invest in companies where there's some type of logical exit outcome, where we can either float it on the stock exchange, or we believe some large trade buyer will end up buying it because it's got unique technology, or it's got a strong market position, or there's something which makes sense for someone else to want to aspire to or own one day. As I said earlier, entrepreneurs come in all shapes and sizes, and I look back at we've probably been involved with 50 or 60 companies that we've invested in over the last 20 years. We currently have a portfolio of 25 active companies. And, so of the 60 or so entrepreneurs that we've backed, as I said, they're coming all different shapes and sizes. Yes, some of them are brilliant academically, PhDs from MIT, masters from Harvard, Stanford, you name it, we've seen it. But the thing which always amazes me, that for every academic, for every entrepreneur who's academically brilliant, there's an entrepreneur who can hardly spell or can hardly put a logical email together. So again, I find it really interesting about that what drives them. It's the same type of thing, that their self-confidence is phenomenal, but their backgrounds can be so different. And the reasons that they're doing it can be so different. Sometimes it's about showing that their fathers that they're better than now, or showing that the teacher who was mean to them when they were in year 10, that they can actually go out and make something of their lives. And as I said, that's one of the great things about our job, is working with entrepreneurs. And it's also one of the things which makes it super challenging as well. Just a couple of points I wanted to highlight is entrepreneurs, by their very nature, are impatient. They want everything tomorrow, which is great, because you want them to have that sense of urgency. You want them to go out and be trying to achieve everything tomorrow. But for dealing with us, yeah, that makes it more challenging because, as I said, yeah, we want to spend a couple of months getting to know them when they want to do the fundraising in a couple of days. Entrepreneurs in Australia tend to be pretty inexperienced. For many of them, it's their first time. In the US, it's very common to have serial entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs who have built a number of companies. In Australia, that's not so common. One of the problems in Australia is I think Australians can be easily satisfied. Once they've gone out, they've had their first big success, they make their 10, 20, $30 million. Many of them are then happy. They go to Byron Bay or go to Noosa and retire, or they become property developers, or they become Collins Street farmers. The concept of those people wanting to make $300 or $500 million isn't so common in Australia. It's changing a bit. It's changed a bit over the last few years, where you're seeing more serial entrepreneurs. But in the US, it's very common, where they are not easily satisfied. They want the bigger boat. They want the bigger house. To them, the scoreboard is the checkbook, and the bigger the bank account, the more they win type of thing. And again, I don't think we have that culture so much in Australia, which obviously has pluses and minuses. But as I said, I think it's changing, and it's changing in the sense that you're now seeing entrepreneurs who've made their money being willing to support new entrepreneurs, as I said earlier, via incubators or via angel networks. And I think it's fantastic because that's one of the biggest challenges in Australia, is that we don't have a big enough pool of experienced managers or a big enough pool of entrepreneurs who've actually gone out and built businesses and want to do it again, or alternatively, want to pass on their experience. We see lots of people coming to us looking for jobs, and one of the things that we always advise people to do is to go and work for an entrepreneur, because I think to live and breathe working for an entrepreneur, one, will make you a better venture capitalist if you want to come and work for us, or alternatively will make you a much better entrepreneur. When you can work with someone who's done it or is doing it and is doing it successfully, I think it's a fantastic learning environment. Entrepreneurs are pathologically optimistic. It's a bit like, we use the analogy a lot of that Monty Python sketch with the Black Knight, where he gets his arms and legs cut off. Maybe Monty Python's not such a great analogy, but there's a story, I think it's The Life of Brian, or one of In Search of the Holy Grail or something, where there's two knights at a contest, a sword contest, and the Black Knight gets his arm cut off, and the other knight goes, I'm not going to, that's it, I've won. He goes, no, I can still kill you, I've got one good arm. And the other knight then, cuts off his other good arms, and he goes, no, I'm still finishing, I can still kick you. So he cuts off his two legs, and he goes, oh, no, I'm still happy to fight because I can bite you. Like to me, that's what an entrepreneur is. An entrepreneur is someone who never wants to give up. Never wants to give up, always thinks that without their arms and legs they can still bite them. And the other analogy I use, and I use this in relation to one of our entrepreneurs, we backed him in a solid state memory play, and he needed to raise some capital. He was based in the US. He went out to 52 venture capitalists to ask for money. 52 of them turned him down. Number 53 said yes. And I use the analogy that, you remember when we were kids, you used to get those little clouds with the sand at the bottom, you punch them in the nose and they flop down and they pop back up again. That's what he was like. 52 times, someone bloodied him in the nose, 52 times he got back up again until someone said yes.
Was he successful?
Sorry?
Was he successful?
No, he wasn't successful in this. That's another story. Well, that's another story. But he was, like at that stage, he needed to raise capital, and he raised capital, and unfortunately, he raised capital back in 2001 or 2002, so basically just as the internet bubble was bursting. So that had a huge impact on his business in retrospect. But just to think that he was willing to be bloodied 50 times, it's a phenomenal story. And if you want to go out and build a company, that's what you've got to be willing to do. Venture capitalists. One of the big challenges, I think, around VCs and entrepreneurs is sometimes it's a bit like mixing oil and water, or some people might say putting petrol on a fire. Is venture capitalists often don't have that real hardcore operating experience. And the industry's changing where I think people with that hardcore operating experience are coming into the industry, venture capital industry, which makes us have much better empathy with entrepreneurs. But often, there tends to be a bit of tension sometimes. Venture capitalists are super busy and really time pressured. And the other thing is, I think we're very cynical, or skeptical. Cynical is probably a better word. We see hundreds of deals a year. Almost all of them never reach their financial projections, never reach their milestones that they're talking about. So when someone comes to visit us and pitches an opportunity, the first thing we say to themselves are, those numbers, you want to achieve those numbers. I've said it 1,000 times before. I don't believe that those numbers are achievable. So that tends to make them a bit more, as I said, cynical about opportunities, and again causes often a bit of tension. And we're risk averse. I've got to take risks, but I don't want to take risks where I lose millions of dollars. So again, there's a balance. We've got the entrepreneurs who are risk takers, who are happy to basically put people's salaries on their mother's credit cards, or basically not pay the tax man for 6 months. And you've got venture capitalists who basically have to do everything relatively by the book, and basically don't want to put themselves in a situation where we end up losing large amounts of money. So again, some real natural tensions there between the entrepreneur and the venture capitalist. So we'll just talk a little bit about the relationship between the entrepreneur and the venture capitalist, because as I said, this is the key to the success. And if you are going to go out and raise capital, one of the things that I would really encourage you to do is to find a venture capitalist that you think you can work with and build a robust relationship with. Because raising capital, I think, can be pretty daunting, and this just gives more of a light look at the comparison between a marriage and having a relationship with a venture capitalist. Because I think it is tough, and it is like a marriage, and you want to make sure that you end up working with someone who you want to work with. Because if you don't want to work with them, keep looking until you find someone. And it's a bit like a marriage. You don't want to marry the first man or first woman that you dance with at the dance, and you want to make sure that you don't end up in divorce, because you might as well not get married, because divorce can be super ugly. One of the things I want to talk a bit about is buying the ring and the valuation. And I'm lucky enough to be married. I've been married to the same wonderful woman for 20 years, and I still remember like it was yesterday. When we went down to buy the engagement ring, we went in to see the jeweler, and he had this way of designing a ring using plasticine. So he'll go out and get the diamonds and the emeralds and put them in like a little plasticine thing, so you can kind of see what it looks like. And the diamonds will come out and stuff. And I'm thinking, how much is this going to cost? And eventually, we had a design that my fiance, my current wife, was happy with. And she said, and how much is that? And the jeweler said the price, and my heart went, oh my God, I've kind of gone weak at the knees. And my wife goes, that cheap? So obviously the opportunity for me to bargain was pretty limited. And evaluation's a bit the same, because I think there's a huge valuation gap expectations between what the entrepreneur wants and what the venture capitalist wants or believes the valuation to be. Like obviously I want it to be as low as possible, and the entrepreneur wants it to be as high as possible. And the great thing about the US, because the market's so much more established in the US, these things are much more standard. So if you're going to raise a Series A, you typically in this band, you raise a Series B, it's in this band, and C, and so on. In Australia, it's not so standard, so there's much more argy-bargy valuation. And that can cause some real tension as part of this investment process. Tension's not a good thing. Like, there's always going to be tension, but sometimes the tension's too much. And we're not a firm at Starfish where we want to screw people to the last cent, because I think it just poisons the relationship. We want to make sure that entrepreneurs feel as though they've got a great opportunity to make great money, and there's good upside and there's good alignment. So we tend to be much more open-minded as a firm about trying to give the entrepreneurs a good opportunity. And one of the challenges, and I think the biggest challenge about valuations, especially at an early stage, is finding that right balance, because a valuation doesn't always reflect the underlying value of what a company is worth. So if two young academics come to us with a great idea around optical components, we might say that, we're happy to invest $1 million and we're happy to earn 30%. So in essence, the two entrepreneurs say to themselves, that's great, the company's worth $3 million and we've got $1 million each. It's not as simple as that, because often no one would buy the company for $3 million. So, albeit on paper, it looks as though it's worth $3 million. It's not as though you can go out and get that value in the market tomorrow, because basically it's just an idea. But it's all about the future value, and it's all about us facilitating, enabling the entrepreneurs to go out and build something where you can get that type of future value. These are just a couple more points about the comparison between marriage. The one I love is the honeymoon. So as soon as the investment is made, everyone's happy. Everything's great. The money's in the bank, the deal's been done. Just enjoy it. Enjoy it as long as you can, because it doesn't last long. And this is where we all want to end up. Hopefully the happy entrepreneur and the happy venture capitalist in some beautiful Pacific or Asian location. This is the team at Starfish Ventures. This is a pretty old photograph. There's 9 people there with currently 7 of us in the team, so we've made a few changes since this picture was taken. But as I said, we've got a real mix of entrepreneurial science type background. I'm a scientist by training. I went to science at Monash University in the early 80s, majoring in botany and physical geography. But I've spent my whole career in finance and investment banking in the last 20 years or so. Private capital in venture capital. I also did an MBA at RMIT and had the chance to go to Stanford last year to do a intensive executive management program there, which was fantastic. These are the types of things that we provide support to our companies. We always go onto the board of our companies, so we want to be there around the key decision-making processes. Obviously we agree to key performance indicators around financial performance, market engagement, budgets, these types of things. Work very closely around agreeing to strategy, business plans, revenue models, and fundraising, and of course, exits. That's the thing that, as I said earlier, that we focus on. A couple of things about what types of opportunities we're seeing at the moment, in the Australian market, and the Australian market kind of follows the US market in what's hot and what's not so hot. And a lot of these things are fashion oriented. So what's hot today is in fashion. That's what the groovy kids are wearing. Tomorrow it could be completely different. But one of the things which is, again, it's been absolutely fantastic is you can do so much more with less amount. Again, 20 years ago, you'd have to write $1 or $2 million to see whether or not companies can actually make it. But nowadays, sometimes with some of these mobile app type plays, you can write a check of $500,000 and you have a great idea whether or not these companies are going to be successful, whether or not they're going to get market engagement. So you have the whole thing around the cloud, SaaS, cheaper hardware, better hardware. It's been fantastic for early stage IT software plays. Obviously, social media is huge. Facebook, has just really driven a whole industry around it, and not just Facebook type things, but around social recruiting, social games, social gaming, gambling, all of these types of things. It should actually say consumer internet, not interest, sorry. So anything around the growth in internet commerce has been phenomenal. Again, it's grown tremendously over the last 5 years, but our view is it's just the thin edge of the wedge. It's going to grow so much more. Mobile apps, cloud, crowdsourcing. Again, I think this is a really interesting area and something which I think will be here for some time. What's not hot? Capital intensity. So anything which needs a huge amount of capital, needs expensive machines, expensive technology. Again, I just think they've gone out of favour. I think people think they just take too long, cost too much money. So one of the big things which have been impacted has been chip development. So you don't see so many chips getting developed now just because of huge costs involved. This has also had a big impact on life science. I think it's much harder at the moment to get a life science company up and away just because of how long it takes to get regulatory approval, how long it takes to get reimbursement approval, just to get a drug approved so you can start selling it is a long and laborious process. And because of that, it just costs so much more money. And again, but trying to balance the risk return, sometimes it's just not there. These companies continue to get funded, but not to the same extent that they were in the past. And definitely, the industry, the venture capital industry, is much more interested in these types of opportunities. So that's it. Very happy to answer any questions. Far away.
So what does it take to get a meeting instead of just being filed away when one sends a proposal to you?
So that's a fantastic question. And the way that you will get a meeting is to tell me that someone Paul's referred you to. No, seriously. One of the best ways to get access to me or to anyone in the industry is through a referral. So it could be, I know Paul Simon suggested that I give you a call. Or the other thing is, I heard you speak at a KOALA conference 3 years ago. Thought you were fantastic. Do you want to have a cup of coffee? And I can assure you, if you do that, you'd definitely get a cup of coffee. So the concept of referrals, recommendations, I think is really important. Because I'm really serious when I say, I don't think you want to marry the first woman or the first guy you dance with. If you want to go out and do the research, find the firm that you want to engage with and engage with them. And having access to someone like a Simon Ford is a great resource because Simon is well known in Australia, well known in our industry, and basically would open up any door that you would want in terms of raising, or in terms of getting access to a venture capital manager.
You don't have Finland in your phone.
I do, we do, but as I said, it's one of the changes that we've made. But I have noticed, but I have noticed the gender balance here. So yes.
You were saying before that a lot of people don't have really the hardcore experience in the industry before they come and ask for money and get affected. What would you recommend to be like sort of, coming out from a PhD? Would you recommend to go to, I don't know, 3-4 years in the industry and then come? Would you think it's enough?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic question, and I think that if you could find the right job in the right company, I think 3 to 4 years experience is fantastic. But I wouldn't be saying you go and work for a Telstra or someone like that. But if you could spend 3 or 4 years at Juniper or Cisco or some of the up-and-coming optical components or the Facebooks of the world, I think that's fantastic experience.
Don't you think that sometimes it's going to be risky when you start with a job and your enthusiasm really comes? Because you start to earn money. And
definitely. I think it's then harder to make
the leap to go out and start on their own. But if you're looking at ways to maximise the success rate of doing something which is successful, I think to work in an entrepreneurial environment and learn from someone else, I think that's really, really valuable. Really valuable. And that's one of the reasons that the US is so powerful in this area, is that there's so many great technology companies where people have worked at, lived and breathed it firsthand, and they've gone out and started their own companies. And they often talk about this matrix, and PayPal is often talked about the number of entrepreneurs that PayPal has established, and it's amazing how many companies have not come out of PayPal, but how many people have come out of PayPal and started their own companies. It builds its own momentum, and it's a wonderful thing.
How do most entrepreneurs cope with the exit strategies for their company that they've put their life into?
Again, and one of the points I didn't talk about with entrepreneurs, and again, one of the things which can make them quite complex is they don't see their companies as just being value creation. Like to me, the companies that we invest in, I'm only focused on value creation. And if it creates value, it's been successful. If it doesn't create value, it's not successful. For an entrepreneur, it's not like that. That their scoreboard is different to mine. So for some of them, that can be really challenging for them, to let go of their companies or to step aside into a different type of role within the organisation when they've got to their capacity in terms of management. But again, it's just something that you need to manage through, and something that we try to be really upfront about. That there's no misconceptions around what we're doing for that. One day we either want to float it on the stock exchange or end up selling it. So again, it's about being transparent and providing the visibility. And this is again where it's challenging for us, because if an entrepreneur is a key value enhancer at a company and the entrepreneur doesn't want to sell, there's nothing that I can do to make them sell. I can have a legal document which kind of puts some pressure on them, but at the end of the day, if they're of the view that they don't want to sell, you can't sell, because no one's going to buy a company where the key technical person or the key value creator isn't interested in an outcome. So again, this comes back to the partnership, making sure that everyone knows what everyone else wants to achieve and working in, hopefully, the same direction. And one of the reasons that sometimes we wouldn't invest in a company is an entrepreneur might give us for viable, might tell us that he never wants to sell, or she might never want to sell.
I guess in our particular field, we a lot of PhD students, you might develop a piece of technology which goes onto the company, and then once you've sold that, you may have developed something else. I think like Richard Branson developed Virgin Records, and he shed a tear when he sold that one. But as a business person, he was able to go on and make many more Virgin companies. They're very successful. But I wonder about how much PhDs could then move on after that they've sold their initial technology.
Look, I think there's often people who come up with one fantastic technical good development often come up with more than one. And Simon Paul is a classic, to me, a serial inventor, a serial entrepreneur, where he's invented a range of different types of optical components. So I would hope that a PhD student, if they can come up with one great idea, can also come up with others as well.
Why would you want to sell a successful company instead of developing it further?
Yes, so
taking the risk of starting something else, which might not.
So that's always the balance for us about when do we sell. We've got some limitations around our time frame for our fund, so we've only got a 10-year window. So typically we need to have sold all of our companies by the end of the year, so by the end of year 10. So sometimes that drives a bit of our thinking, a bit of our positioning. For entrepreneurs, just because we want to sell doesn't always mean that they have to sell. Maybe there's the opportunity to float the company on the stock exchange, or alternatively find another private equity investor or find another strategic investor who can buy our shares and allow the entrepreneur to remain. But again, that's the balance which can cause a bit of tension, where maybe we're not all economically aligned, where, as you say, the entrepreneur thinks he's got a great business that he or she wants to pass on to their children, we are 30% shareholder and we want to get some money out of it. So again, often you reach some type of compromise, and one of the very common compromises is the entrepreneur then buys us out. If the company's been very successful, he or she might be able to borrow money to buy us out.
You mentioned earlier about some failed investments. So can you give us an example of an investment which failed, particularly in Australia, and probably highlight on the fact that what drove the venture to fail?
Yeah, so unfortunately there's so many failed opportunities. I don't know which one to focus on. Let me talk in generalities rather than talk about specifics. I think people tend to be the major reason why companies tend to fail, because they have a inability to execute on the agreed business plan. And sometimes that's as much our fault as it is theirs, because we haven't put the right people in the right positions. Because people have certain skill bases. Someone who's great at technically developing something tends not to be so great at recruitment. Someone who's great at recruitment might not be good at selling. So what we need to do is to make sure that we build a robust management team that have all of the bases covered. Often when the failure of a company is related to poor management, it relates to our lack of robustness in the management team. And sometimes you have restrictions around being able to get people available capital and so on. The other thing which really upsets venture capitalists is transparency. One of the things we hate are surprises. We don't like going along to board meetings and being told that things have gone really badly when there's been no recognition of things were going badly. And a typical case is we had an investment in a company in Burnley called the Preston Group. And the Preston Group was the first successful commercial spin out of CSRO. And they've developed a range of simulation software products, which was basically used to manage the airspace. So this is something that you'd sell to an airport or an airline to basically allow them to control takeoffs and landings, to do it as efficiently as possible. Because airlines, planes don't like sitting on the runway because it upsets passengers, and also it's too expensive as it basically burns up too much aviation fuel. So we'd agreed that we were going to basically upgrade their core technology. And I remember, we had a board meeting in June. I'm getting the dates wrong, but it doesn't matter. Board meeting in June, and we were told the product was going to be finished in August. So we're great, really excited. And this is a product which has taken millions of dollars, right, to get there. So we're thinking August. Yeah, we got to the July board meeting. Oh, no, it's not August. It's September. Oh, no, it's at the months with it. So we got to the August board meeting. So we're really excited about this new. No, it's not September. It's December. Gee, there's a bit of a pattern here, and we don't like this pattern. So we actually got out. So we'd lost so much confidence. So we actually went out and got a third party to come in to do a technical review, just so that we could get a better feel for when this product was going to be developed. And the review came back a month or so later, and their view was there was no reasonable time frame that they could have any certainty about where it was going to get released. So after millions of dollars, we had this thing which was half built. We said, fine, we are closing down this product development, and we're going to kind of upgrade what we've got, but we're not going to go for the big bang approach. And the R&D team, and there might have been 4 or 5 of them, said, no, you're not going to do that. If you don't continue with this product, we're going to leave, because it's this product or nothing. And we said, no, we can't afford it. So basically, that whole team walked out. They had a mass walkout, mass resignation, and we went, oh, gee, this is pretty unfortunate. So we're then stuck in a situation where our key product development wasn't going to happen. Our product team had walked out, our key developers had walked out, and all at the same time, our CEO was having a bit of a nervous breakdown. So yeah, this is a pretty difficult situation. So we decided that we needed to find a new CEO, and we needed to find someone quickly, and we needed to make sure that they were really incentivised. So we went out and found this gentleman by the name of Stephen Gumley. Stephen Gumley, he's a very successful entrepreneur. Now, back then, he'd only had a couple of successes. And we went to Stephen and I said, Stephen, we need you. We're going to give you 20% of the company. And with the 20%, you could do with it what you want. You could keep half of it. You could give half to the other senior team. It's up to you. Stephen went, fine, I'll keep half for myself, 10% for myself, and I would allocate 10% across the other senior management team. And it's hard to believe the impact that one person can have on a company until you've seen it. And Stephen turned that company around. It took him probably 6 to 12 months, and we put in a bit more money. But he eventually turned the company around, and we eventually sold it to Boeing and had a really good success. So that was something which was literally dead in terms of prospect of success, to where we made some drastic actions, gave away 20% of the company, put some more money, and got a really good outcome. And the key thing about that is it was much about people as anything else. The CEO should have known about where we were with the technical development on that product. He should have been able to manage his team better where they wouldn't have worked out. And the other discipline that Stephen brought to the company was something that he should have done. So our core product, we used to sell between anything from 250,000 to 750,000, depending on how much need we had for cash, and also on what customers were willing to pay. When Stephen Gumley came in, he just said, that's it, we're selling everything at 750,000. If someone wants it for 350, they don't get it. And guess what happened? Everyone paid $750,000. But that's just one story. Any other questions? Sorry, I've got a bit over time. Yep.
How important do you think it is for the entrepreneur to be thinking about some of the domain knowledge of the venture capitalists? Is that hard in Australia where there's a less high-tech industry?
I think it's more challenging, but I really think it's important to find someone who understands the space that you're trying to focus on. Yeah. But I think you've worked that out pretty quickly, to be honest. And again, to me, I think it goes back to the core relationship. If you can find someone who understands or sympathy or empathy around the space that you're targeting, I think it makes it much easier for you.